better, hopefully. Is that working a little better, I'm hoping? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Anything? How's that? Loud noises. Sorry. Is it too loud now? I'm hoping it's working now. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it's not only is it YouTube, but also for some reason my computer just recently has decided to reset all of my audio stuff. I did a Skype call yesterday with someone, and it took quite some time to figure out that it had decided to use my default microphone, which I don't even know what that is. It's not this one. So there we go. Hooray. And I guess I should have thought of that ahead of time. Sorry. Anyway, like I was trying to say, also, YouTube has changed a bunch of their software on the back end. They've been messing with it for the last year, and but there was always a little button that you could click that says, yeah, I don't want to use this dumb software. I want to use the good software, the old stuff that I'm used to. And now that button is gone. So I was not sure how that was going to work out. So yeah, that was the opening speech, was that I was explaining that I was hoping that things were going to work with this new software. And it seems to, but then my computer also slightly betrayed me a little bit with the with the microphone. There has been some cat shenanigans going on this morning. It's been a little all-star wrestling in here, so there's that. I've been having audio issues too. Weird, says Randall. I have a suspicion that it's some sort of update that Windows did that screwed everybody up, probably, if I had to guess. Let's see here. Hello from Poland. Hello from Ottawa. Taylor says, mine did the same thing recently. See? Trickery. We think it's, yeah. Bloomington, Illinois. Spending Sunday pre-priming my pre-primed miniature. Airbrush win. Nice. All right. Audio is excellent on Twitch stream, too. Yeah, it's gotten better on Twitch, too. I bought a new piece of hardware that I plugged in between the microphone and the audio interface, and it's helped quite a bit. So there we go. Let's see here. Atlanta, Georgia. We got Chicago. Hey, we got Zambies. How you doing, Zambies? Hello, hey, it's Sundered Psyche. Hello from very wet southwest Australia. I was meant to do yard work today, but was no way it was happening. Well, then you weren't meant to do it. If they decided it was going to rain, then no yard work. Belgium, Berlin. No, not doggy, cat, kitty. Cat noises is what that was. Nothing like a kitty hell in the cell. Well, we don't do that generally. We don't keep them in the Looking forward to cat shenanigans today, says VJ Morph. Well, we've already got some. Let's see here. Were you in a movie with Sam Lenz called Dead Weight? Yes, I was. We filmed it back in like 2010. You can see it on Amazon Prime. It's a zombie movie without any technical zombies in it, really. But yeah, Sam was in it a bit more than I was. But yeah, we were in that movie together. We knew each other from before that, but yeah. That was filmed like right here in town, mostly. Let's see here. Sean says, I have a new cat/kitten. I do not like the way he looks at my models, like they are tasty. Hello from Glossop, UK. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I don't let the cats in the basement. Hey, Jason Tick, how you doing? Uncle Adam, a.k.a. the movie star. Yeah, it was fun. And it was one of those things where it was supposed to go onto Netflix, and there was going to be a whole thing and all that stuff, and then the distributor was weird and problematic, and then eventually it did get onto Amazon Prime. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can look for a movie called Dead Weight, and I'm in the last 3/4. Well, you know what? You don't see me until the last 3/4 of the movie, but I'm not in it that much. And Sam's in it too. Cat Shenanigans would be a good band name. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I could see that. Hi from London. Hey from Ireland. Let's see here. My cats help me build minis, and by help I mean they completely hinder. Yeah, I can understand that. Good morning from Indiana. Checking in before going to shovel horse poop. Okay, all right, well, there you go. Let's see here. Hi from the Isle of Wight. Hope you're keeping safe in Oshkosh. I know it's close to Kenosha. It's not close to Kenosha at all. It's Kenosha is like at least a 2-hour drive away from me. So yeah, it's not. I'm in the middle part of the state, and Kenosha's right on the border with Illinois. So yeah, it's quite far away. Let's see here. Anyone hear anything about when the new Warcry set is supposed to drop? I haven't, strangely. Is Deadweight good in your opinion? It's slow. I think it's very well done, especially for how low budget it is. And I think that it's much more of a psychological thriller. And then the distributor decided to try to make it, like, from the cover you look at it, you're like, oh, it's a zombie movie. Which it sort of is. But it's not really zombies. They're infected, and you really don't see them till the very end. But the horror comes from how the humans treat each other, who are the survivors and stuff like that, which is the mark of, I think, any good zombie movie, generally. Yeah. So there's that. Morning from Niagara, Canada. I was near there last year for the mini wargaming Battle Bunker opening and all that stuff. Let's see here. My cats just seem to just shuffle in and out of my paint and minis room. Yeah, I don't know. There's been a lot of tearing ass around the house this morning. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it could be squirrels outside. I suppose there's that. Let's see here. My cat has a habit of wanting to lay down in the middle of any board that has terrain set up. She's a destroyer of boards. Yeah, one of the girls, Margot, wants to always be on the dining room table. So, yeah, I would definitely have... if she was downstairs, she would be on my hobby table as much as possible, which would not be good. So, yeah. 40K only player. Is Warcry worth getting into? I think so. Like, if you want to dip your toe into the fantasy side, like, if you're a bit like, I've been playing 40K this whole time, and I really like it. But those spooky boys, the Night Haunts, they look really cool, and I want to build and paint some. Then Warcry would be the great way to go about it, because you wouldn't have to do too many. Whereas, like, if you were to build an entire Age of Sigmar army, that's a good deal more, more models you have to build and paint and buy and all that stuff. Store, carry around. Whereas Warcry is, I think, it's a small amount, kind of like Kill Team. Warcry is basically fantasy Kill Team for the most part, and plus the terrain is cool, so you can either make your own terrain, you can use the terrain that they sell. If you can find the starter box at a local, independent shop, those are still, I think, a really great starter kit. There's a new starter kit that's coming out that's going to be a bit different, but then they also sell terrain kits as well for Warcry. Like, they got that cool, it used to be called the Garden of Moor, and it was basically a cemetery. Well, they've changed the name to something else now, but it's basically the same kit. So that's also very cool. Adam, headed into Gigabytes today in Georgia. Want to say hi to anyone? Well, the one guy that I know the best from there technically doesn't live in Georgia. John Caspian, who's their marketing guy and who's a friend of mine, he actually lives in Cincinnati. So he won't be there. Well, I mean, I guess it's a possibility he might be there. If you see John Caspian, say hi to him. Otherwise, probably I've only barely met a couple of other folks who work there that I know of. Hello from Kilmarnock, good lord, Kilmarnock in Scotland. I'm spending my 41st birthday with you in the background while I paint some plastic. Well, happy birthday. I'm glad to hear it. One of my cats prefers paint water to their full bowl of water. He's not that bright anyway. Well, they're going to get less bright, I think, if there's... well, you're probably not painting with lead paint, I'm sure. So there's that's probably not that big of a deal, but still, not great. Our cats just love to lie in the hobby table among model parts, brushes, color pots. Yeah, they just do love it. Yeah, they always... Also lying down where I want to sit. Yeah. Currently, Diesel is sleeping on my wife's chair, but she had to go to work, so, yeah, it's okay. But, yeah, with Labor Day, and she works at the university, so the kids are coming back, I guess, sort of, kind of, we'll see. Luckily, she's not anywhere near them. She's in the basement, usually, so of the building that she's in, so nonetheless, not awesome. Zingbo says, Warcry surprised me with how much fun it is. Yeah, it is. Initially, I was kind of like, I don't know, and then I've definitely, I've definitely gotten a lot more interest in it. I purchased Warcry to have a break from 40K, and to be honest, I may not go back. I have 3 warbands going and more planned. Nice. I was looking at some Warcry yesterday. The Cypher Lords and the Spire Tyrants look cool. Neither of those models is like my jam, particularly. I know that they're well sculpted and stuff like that, but aesthetically, they're just not my interest. But I know a lot of people do. Iron Golems, I like the look of quite a bit. Corvus Cabal, I like the look of quite a bit, too. So there's that. Let's see here. Any advice for dealing with someone dealing with chronic pain and shaking hands trying to improve my painting endurance? I mean, it's probably one of those situations where you have to like try to figure out if it's better sometimes in the early part of the day versus the late part of the day. Some people find that painting earlier in the day is better for them. Like they get up like, and by the later part of the day, either eye strain can be a problem. Sometimes I take a little bit of ibuprofen if I know I'm going to be painting for a long time and I'm probably going to be looking over the top of my glasses like a jerk and doing that. I will then take ibuprofen before I start painting, or I don't know, acetaminophen or whatever, something like that, just so that it helps with my eyes. But I honestly should be looking through the bifocal parts. Well, they're not they're whatever, the transition-y lenses. I should be looking through those instead of looking over the top, but it's hard to train myself. Or wearing the headset thingy, which also works there too. So, but yeah, it's that's a good question. Let's see here. Spending today's stream labeling my various hobby supplies in my hobby zone system. Nice. My late cat loved flaking out in the middle of my battle boards. Cat hair was a noticeable feature. Yeah, I even still, with not like letting them in the basement, I still get cat hair in the basement from time to time. If you've been watching on Twitch, every once in a while I'll just be like barking at something. I'd be like, where did this cat hair come from? Although on Friday there was a spider that dropped down like right in front of me, but it was really super crazy tiny. So I just sort of grabbed his little his little bungee cord and just moved him elsewhere, which means he's just going to make a mess someplace else. I like spiders, and I know that they're bros and stuff like that, and they help us out by killing bugs or whatever, but if they could not leave webs all over that I walk into, and if they could not poop on my laptop, that would also be great too. So, yeah. Otherwise, I'm fine with them. I've been painting and gaming pulp era period for the last 5-6 years, Russian Civil War and Warlord, wanting to paint more pulp era, but more civilian, not military. I know there's a lot of pulp era, like almost like H.P. Lovecraft type stuff, like that. I've seen some of that kind of stuff out there. It's pretty cool. Jeremy from Blackmagic Craft did a whole video about this. Definitely worth watching. I think you're talking about like how to like work with like pain and shaking and stuff like that. Yeah. Blackmagic Craft's a good channel. Yeah, I definitely. Yeah. If people complain about your painting when you have a medical issue, those are not people you want to play with. Yeah, that's very true too. Blackmagic Craft has issues with handshake and did a great video on it last week. Nice. Greetings from rainy Tinley Park. Painting my Indominus Necrons. Nice. Yeah, it's probably going to rain here a little bit later on. It's a little grim outside, but not too bad. Let's see. Hey, Adam, are the Warcry boxes all compatible with Age of Sigmar? I think so. Question mark. I'm pretty sure that the 6 warbands and soon to be 7, I believe that there's a war scroll for each of them. I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. I know that there are war scrolls for each of the Warhammer Underworld warbands, and I think that there are for the Warcry ones. I got to be honest, I haven't looked real hard, so I don't know that for sure. I would think it would be pretty stupid of them to not, because they want to sell those models. So I'm pretty sure that they are, but I don't know that for sure. Let's see here. According to Kevin, they're all usable in Slaves to Darkness. Nice. Hi from Nottingham. I was at Warhammer World yesterday. It looks sad with the gaming hall out of bounds. Yeah. I was down at the studio yesterday morning shooting shooting these photos, which I put on Instagram and stuff like that yesterday afternoon. And the farmer's market was going on and all that stuff. And on my way back out, I stopped at... There's a hot dog place, store or a hot dog store. It's a hot dog little shop, restaurant, whatever, that I haven't been to since March when all this started. And so I decided to stop in, quick grab some hot dogs, wearing a mask, and to go carry out. And they just have it's a really tiny place. It's only got like 3 booths, but the booths are like, they're all one piece kind of, like, I don't know. They're like metal, and anyway, they've just turned them all on their sides, so you can't sit on them. So you walk in there, and it looks like they're like cleaning the floors or something, but then you realize they're just social distancing. So I got some hot dogs and came home. Let's see. I noticed Warcry because of the models. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed playing it. Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's a solid game. Like it initially, when I first looked at it and read the rules and stuff, I'm like, this seems really simple. But it's it's one of those games where, yeah, there's simplicity to it, but there's still a decent amount of like planning and elegance and in the rule set, and there's also strategy and stuff like that, I think. So it's cool. Good morning from the Pocket Dimension. How you doing, JP Got Rockets? Good to see you. Morning all from or afternoon all from a mildly damp West Yorkshire. Nice. Lori asks, should I start Kill Team instead of 40k? Honestly, I'd say yeah. I mean, if you're looking to take steps towards 40k, I think that Kill Team's a good way to start. And the reason for that is because then you can basically, rather than having to paint an entire Adeptus Mechanicus army, you could just paint a relatively small section of Adeptus Mechanicus and decide whether you like it. Adeptus Mechanicus can be sometimes difficult to paint because they have a lot of cloaks, like a lot of coats, but then they also have long spindly legs, so sometimes they can be kind of hard to build. But if you get them together and you love them, then that may be the way you want to go when you head into 40k. Or you get an army together and you're like, ugh, I don't ever want to do that again. Well, now you know. So maybe the thicker Space Marines are the type of thing you're looking for. Or maybe you're into lots of spikes and filigree, so then you're into chaos. So the thing that's great about it is it's like, and I keep saying this, it's a buffet. Kill Team is a buffet. So is Warcry. You can try little bits of this and that. Like for Warcry, soon I'll be doing Gloomspite Gits, which will be great. I've never done them before. I'm going to do a small little warband of Gloomspite Gits versus doing an entire army of Gloomspite Gits for Age of Sigmar. So, yeah, I honestly think it's a good thing that way, as far as just being able to kind of dip your toe. I think it's a good idea. I also like the fact that the games are shorter, and I also like being able to move models individually versus moving squads, but that's a me thing potentially. Those thumbnail minis, they're pig iron ones, right? Yep. Colony Militia. Yeah, they are these are Colony Militia from Pig Iron Productions. These are metal miniatures. They come pretty much all one piece except for the head. So basically from the neck down, they're all one piece. They're older kind of sculpts to some degree. They're a little chunky. They got pouches for days. Every one of those guys has got 7 pouches on them, I think. But the heads are swappable, and they sell lots of different heads and things like that. You could use those same heads on regular guardsman bodies or whatever you want to. But yeah, I'll show them a little bit more in a bit. But yeah, there was something that I wanted to do. I bought a bunch of models from them recently, and I wanted to paint some up. And I just honestly built them, primed them black, like a white zenithal highlight from the top down, and then other than the bases, all the rest of the color on those models is all contrast. Well, there's also, I use a little metallic silver on the clasps. Excuse me, on their like pouches. They all have these pouches with like a little clasp, and so those I did a little touch of silver on each one. But otherwise, everything else, it's like Astra Militarum green or whatever it's called. Militarum green? I don't know. Creed camo, Basilicum gray. There's some Black Templar on there. My beloved snakebite leather. I forget what brown I used on the boots. It was either Wildwood or the other one that's real dark. And I used the Blood Angels red in the eye lenses. And that was basically it. But yeah, they're cool. I'm going to use them in probably Planet 28 Battle Report at some point or something like that. But I just wanted to... I painted them a long time ago. Those exact same models. More than a decade ago. And I just primed them terrible. I just like... The prime was so fuzzy. It was just really bad. So they just looked... I mean, because they're not smooth models particularly anyway. They're kind of a rougher metal. And I probably should have gone through and sanded them a little bit, but I was like, meh. And it's only really in photography that they look like that. When you look at them photographically close up with a macro lens, they do look like that. But on the tabletop, they look a lot better, which is always the case. Generally, but... The old ones, I was like, I could just strip these, but I kind of wanted to keep them as a reminder to myself a little bit. If you fuzz a model real bad with your primer, just go strip the model and start over again. Don't just be like, well, I'll just paint over the fuzz, because it doesn't look good. Does not look good. I agree. AdMech are a little fussy because of the cloaks, but they are some of the coolest models in 40Ks these days, in my opinion. See, that's the personal preference. Like, I think they're pretty cool too, but there are some people who are like, I just think they're stupid looking. And so, you know, if they're stupid looking but easy to build, one thing. But if you're stupid looking and you find them hard to build, then you're really not going to want to build an entire army of them. So there's that. Painting some Nurgle for the first time for a commission. Any tips on those bug-like wings? What I'm going to be doing on mine, so if you guys have been watching me on Twitch at all lately, which lately you can, you can next see it on Monday night at 7 p.m. Central Time, but otherwise I also do Fridays at 10 a.m. Central Time. But I've been painting a Nurgle warband, actually, Nurgle Rotbringers, or Blight Kings, or whatever you want to call them, for Warcry. So I've got 5 Putrid Blight Kings, and then I've got 1 Pusgoyle Blight Lord, I believe is the proper name. Pusgoyle Blight Lord, which evidently is on his business card, so I'm going to believe him. Anyway, he's a big fat guy who looks like a Putrid Blight King, but he's riding on a big weird bug. And that bug has got 4 wings. He's got like 2 on each side, kind of like a dragonfly, I guess. World's worst looking dragonfly, though. It's got a big old butt. Anyway, what was my point? Oh, so those I'm going to paint. I'm going to do the entire model, matte varnish everything, and then paint the wings. And my plan is to paint the wings black, the actual membrane of the wing. Paint the wings black, then use gloss, not gloss varnish, but gloss, not Agrax or shade, Nuln Oil. So they make they make a lot of the gloss, make a lot of the shades now also in gloss, and I've never wanted those. I've always wanted to be matte, but I bought the gloss Nuln Oil to put on the membranes of those wings, so they are totally black. Now you could just stay there and have glossy, nice black wings, which would be sort of cool. But my plan is to actually then use Turbo Dork color changing paint over that black gloss, because usually those Turbo Dork paints will tell you right on the bottle, and the color I want, they'd say use it over a black gloss. So I'm doing that, and I'm going to paint it over it, which will give it a sort of crazy iridescent look to it. So that's a potential. You might want to look into doing something like that, looking for like a pearlescent or iridescent color. I have seen people who have taken the wings and actually cast them in resin and then cast them in clear resin so that they would have I honestly wish those wings were clear plastic. I wish that they would have sent along a separate sprue of those wings in just clear plastic, because I think that would have been a lot more interesting. But so there you go. What causes fuzzy primering? Very frequently, it's the primer's gone bad in a can if it's gotten old. I just ran into that recently with a model that I primed outside and then was like, oh, crap. And that, yeah. Sometimes it can also be a humidity issue. It can also sometimes be if you're too far away, because if you're too far away with the rattle can, literally the primer will dry in the air before it hits. Not completely, but mostly dry before it hits, and then it will hit. And sometimes stick, and sometimes even not. Like that model that I recently fuzzed real bad, that I had to strip again. It's a Reaper Bones Black model. I can't remember his name. He's a big, huge guy in armor, like an ogre, and he's got a skull for a face. That might help you if you are familiar with that line. I just saw the model someplace, and I was like, ooh, I want to paint that. So I did. But when I first primed him with the rattle can, like half of well, not half, let's say a third of the primer I probably could have just brushed off with my hands. And I wasn't too far away, so it was the other problem. The can of primer that I was trying to use, I thought it was a lot newer than it was, and I think it had been sitting on the shelf for a really long time, and so it fuzzed real bad. So I just threw it in LA's Totally Awesome, and it came out literally completely clean. Like, I couldn't see. There was like one spot where I was like, it looked like it maybe, I don't want to say stained the plastic a little bit, but there was certainly no primer left behind. But yeah, I was amazed. Big fat guy in a bug. That's basically the other name for the Pusgoyle Blight Lord. Or Lords, I guess, technically, because there's 2 of them in the box if you buy it. Adam, what is a good wash for skin tone if you don't have the money to buy something like Agrax? Anthrax? What is that? Athgrax. Probably Agrax. I mean, if you're going to do your own, if you want to do your own washes for skin tones, I mean, you could just do glazes, which are basically just adding water to some degree to your, a warmer color paint. There's a lot of little options you can do in that situation. If you're really looking for a wash, just watering down a paint won't make a wash. Do a little Google search for how to make your own washes. I know there's a bunch of decent videos out there. That might help you, because then you can make like bulk, like lots and lots of wash, or even make a lot of wash but in many different, smaller batches of different colors. But yeah, just watering down paint does not make a wash, because what happens is you put it on there and it looks like a wash, but then just before it dries, like if you've put it on, let's say this arm, before it dries, the surface tension in the big flat area up here will start to pull the pigment out of the crease in my arm here, and then it will make this thing that they call a high tide mark or a coffee stain, and it will just suck the pigment out of the creases. And you want the pigment to stay in the creases. That's the whole point of washes. The reason that washes do the job that they're supposed to do is because they have something in them that causes the water surface tension to break much easier. So as the whole thing is evaporating and everything like that, once it starts to pull on the surface tension in the big flat area, it just snaps, and then all the fluid ends up staying in the crevices where it dries, and then that way the pigments stay where they're supposed to. If you just water down a paint, you'll put it on something, it will look like it's a wash, but then just before it starts to dry completely, it will start to suck the pigment out of the crevices, and your paint job will look like crap. So there are, like, some people will use, there's a floor polish, an acrylic floor polish you can use that people will put drops of it to mix in, because floor polish, to basically combat streaking on your linoleum or tile floors, they put something in the floor polish to make it so that the surface tension breaks really, really super quickly, so you don't get streaking, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a floor polish scientist. Anyway, so yeah, look into that. Do some Google searching, and you could make your own washes for pretty cheap and have washes for days. I'm using Liquitex Iridescent Medium on my big booty fly wings. Nice. I'll have to look into that. I did just, VJ Morph, I did just yesterday get my Vallejo plastic putty with the long needle thing. That just showed up in the mail yesterday, so I'm looking forward to that. Trying that stuff out soon. How old is old, and do cans have a date? They generally don't, and I don't know the answer to how old is old. That can was probably 5 years old, so yeah. What I used to do when I used to use testers, dull coat for my matte varnish, is I would buy it and I would bring it home and I would write the date that I bought it on the outside of the label or whatever, so that when I went to go grab some, I would look at it, because that stuff also, if it got old, it could fog a little bit, which is another reason why I'm kind of not using testers dull coat as much anymore anyway. Maggot Crown Ogre Juggernaut. Ah, yeah, that's the guy with the skull face. Yeah, I started working on him. So I stripped all the primer off of him, reprimed him, Zenithalled him from above basically with silver instead of, so he's black, and then instead of white, I Zenithalled him above with silver, because he's got so much armor, and it just makes sense. And then but then last night, what was I doing yesterday? Oh, I painted started working on his face. Like, I painted his face all brown because it's all bone, and I always start with a chocolate brown basically as the base, or oak brown. I just happen to have another little bottle of oak brown here from Army Painter, which is also when I'm doing bone or horn, like special bits on a model. If I'm painting a skeleton, I don't start brown. I start actually at kind of a tan. But if I'm painting a model that's been primed black or some other dark color, rather than trying to put bone color directly over that, I like to put brown down first and then do the bone color over that. Anyway, so yeah, his head's not done, but it's at least got the base bony color on it. Did I throw a wash on him last night before I went? I don't remember. No, I think it was another model that had a bunch of skulls on it that I did a wash on. I don't think I did the wash on him yet. So anyway, he's in progress. Just finished my first army, Wrath of Kings Shale Han. Took like 2 weeks. Super hyped about it. Nice. There you go. Date your cans. Use a Sharpie right at the purchase date and the first time you use it. Not a bad idea. I can see that, definitely. Whoop. Do I have a recipe for wash? I don't. Like I said, I would look on Google. I think that Luke from Luke's APS, which is a YouTube channel, I think he still calls it Luke APS, or has he changed the company? Has he changed it to his name? I don't remember. Just do a Google search for Luke's APS, which was originally stood for Affordable Painting Service. I think that's what APS stood for. Anyway, I'm pretty sure he's got a video about it. Otherwise, old video from the earlier days of YouTube. A guy named Les Bursley. You could look him up, Les, L-E-S, or Lester Bursley. He also had a really good recipe for washes as well. Luke's APS has a video making some cheap Agrax and Null oil. There you go. Yep. So that's a way to go too. Hey Adam, I've been meaning to get into Relic Blade. Is it a good campaign game in your opinion? Yeah, I like it. I haven't really backed much in the way of Kickstarters this year, but I backed their second edition Kickstarter, which was a couple months back. So hopefully soonish we will see. I'll be receiving that like by the end of the year or maybe beginning of 2021. But yeah, I think it's a great if you're looking for like a really small kind of skirmishy level, fantasy game with really interesting, I think really cool models. I mean, they're metal, so if you've got a real aversion to metal, that's something to think about. But they're well done metal, I think, and they're not lots and lots of pieces. They're also I love the art style that Sean does. Sean is the guy who basically is kind of the whole team to some degree. I mean, between writing it, laying it out, doing all the artwork, doing all the sculpting. I think he might be pouring the metal. I don't know. It's a lot. But yeah, he does really good stuff. People talking about Pledge floor polish and things like that. I believe the reason washes work the way they do is because it's like it has a gloss medium in them, while a regular paint has a matte medium. The difference between the holes in the paint. I can see that too. Gloss has no holes in it, so it because that's the thing. Gloss medium versus matte medium. The reason that matte medium is matte is because it has a rougher surface, so it doesn't reflect light as easily. It more refracts it, I think. I could be wrong on that. First time catching the live stream, I ordered some bits from Puppet War, and I'm looking forward to kit bashing. How long does shipping take to get to the States? Thanks for the hobby advice. Puppet War is a Polish company, and as a lot of the resin bits companies seem to be from Poland, and I don't know why that is. But they are. Anyway, and that's a good question. Like the stuff that I ordered, when was the last time I ordered from those guys? I think it was maybe before COVID, so it only took a couple of weeks. But I know for a while, like in the early days of COVID, they either couldn't ship outside of Poland for a little while, or they couldn't ship to America. I don't know exactly, but I think that's been lifted. But it still might take, like they're pretty good. Most of those guys, W. Artel, there's other ones I can't think off the top of my head right now. But most of those folks are pretty good about, tracking information, or at least letting you know when it's shipped. So hopefully, yeah. Most recent bits, to some degree, that I ordered were from Anvil Industry, which is technically a UK company. So it was a different story. And I actually got them far faster than I thought I would. So that was nice. Let's see here. I'd like to try... My can was less than a year old from the Warhammer store. The other trick, though, about primer, unfortunately, sometimes in cans, like rattle cans, is it might have also been sitting on the shelf at the store for a long time. Depending on how popular the store is and how much of it they carry, but that's why you generally don't see at a hobby store, like 10 of each color. It's because they keep the stock a lot lower, because rattle can primer, if it sits on the shelf for a real long time, will start to not work as well. So most hobby stores that I've seen have kept their stock levels quite a bit lower. So that's why they're frequently out of stuff, but it's also then the stuff is fresher, I guess. I got to be honest, that's one of those deals I like. That's one of the big reasons why I don't generally use rattle can as much as I used to. Plus, winter 6 months of the year, and also humid so much when it's not winter. So there's that, yeah. I'd like to try to get my mates to play Necromunda or war games in general, but the rules are so complex I'm afraid it will put them off. Any tips on how to overcome this with them? If you want to get them into a war game, and not if it can be fantasy, let's say, then I would tell you to do some Googling, and you would look up a game called Song of Blades and Heroes. Song of Blades and Heroes is the game that I teach when I go to conventions. If I go to a convention, like a small local convention, and I'm going to run a game, I will teach people how to play Song of Blades and Heroes because it is a very simple rule set, but it's very kind of elegant. Again, like I was saying earlier, it's very elegant in its strategy, efficiency. Basically, you have a model. Let's say it's your turn and you're going to move this guy, and you can roll 1, 2, or 3 6-siders. And your model has a quality. So let's say your model's quality is 4+. Okay, that means when you roll a 6-sider to try to get a success to do an action on a 1, 2, 3 doesn't work out, and on a 4, 5, 6 it does. So if you rolled 3 dice and got 3 successes, 4 or up, you could now do 3 things. You could move, and fight, or you could move, and something else, or you could. There's up to 3 things you could do in that situation. But if you only the question you might ask yourself is like, well, why wouldn't I always just roll 3 dice? Because if you throw at any single roll, if you roll 2 failures, your turn ends, and you don't get to do any more turn or moves that turn. So, and when it's your turn, you just go through all your people. So if the very first person, it's your turn, okay, this guy, he's going to try to do something, and you roll 3 dice and throw 2 failures. If you got 1 success, you get to do 1 thing, and then your turn's over, and it goes back to your opponent. So every time that you're rolling at least 2 dice on a model, you are gambling because you might throw 2 failures and end your turn. If you only throw 1 die, though, it is impossible to get 2 failures on 1 die. So if you throw 1 die and you fail, well, then you can move to your next model. So it's like a very simple system. It's very, and like you're not tracking hit points and stuff like that. It's a simple system, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're trying to teach them to kind of get them into the bug, I would definitely look at something like Song of Blades and Heroes. And there's tons of expansions and things like that if you want to go down that road. But the main book, if you buy the PDF, last time I looked, it was like $8 or $9. So it's pretty inexpensive. And I think you can even get it printed, like a print-on-demand version if you're not into PDFs and stuff like that. But they're less. It's less than, I don't know, last time I looked, it was maybe $16, maybe 15. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, Song of Blades and Heroes. It's by a company called Ganesha. I don't particularly know how to pronounce it, but it's the Indian kind of elephant god. Ganesha Games. And it's quite good. It's also in many different languages, too. So, Lumberbeans says, first time catching the live stream. I just ordered some bits from Puppets 4. I already answered that question. Sorry, I missed the first part, though. Let's see here. Thinking about assembling 4 war bands to be able to play Warcry with some friends. I already have Night Haunts. Any suggestions for the other 3 bands that would make for a well-balanced game? I am probably not the person to talk to about balance, because I'm not good at strategy in general, so I can't tell you, these guys are, optimally. I don't even know what those words mean. If you're going to do some regular models, and when I say regular, I mean just regular Age of Sigmar models as opposed to specific Warcry models. I have heard from people that they believe that the Warcry models are underpowered in comparison to regular Age of Sigmar models. So you might want to stick with just straight Age of Sigmar models. Warcry, Night Haunts, and then maybe, what else do you like? Stormcast, Nurgle Dudes, Skaven. There's a lot of different options. I clean and prime 3 or 4, maybe even 5 metal figures before I've cleaned and built 1 plastic figure. I still generally prefer plastic, although I gotta be honest, there's certain resins that I'm starting to like now too. Like those models that I bought for Zona Alpha, I bought a bunch of different models from Anvil Industry out of the UK, and that stuff's all resin, and I really like it. It's quite nice. I switched from rattle can to airbrush priming using MIG one-shot, and I found it easier to control and providing more consistent quality. That's also true. Yeah, I've found that I get better primes with my airbrush than I do with rattle can because, again, you're right, consistency and stuff like that. After about 17 years of just dreaming, I started now with Warhammer 40k some weeks ago. I'm quite content with my squad, but it takes me so long. When you first start, it will take a long time. That's just the way it works. I did a video about this a number of years back. What happens, what I noticed at least, was that my painting got better, The more I did it, the more I practiced, the more I worked on it. My painting got better, and then I got to a point where I hit a plateau, and my painting didn't really get any better, but it did get faster. And that's also partially just from experience and from understanding, like, you know, this will be quicker, or this is a step I don't need to take. You know, no one will ever see this. You know, if I decide I have to go through and wash the boots perfectly and put it just on the top of the boots, but not the whole boot, people never go, oh, I see you just wash the top of the boots. That's, that's not going to, you know. So you find these little things, plus you just get better at it and you're not thinking about it as much. You're just sort of doing it. And so that speeds things up as well. What about Scott being afraid of Vince? What's going on? I guess I missed some stuff out. What else? Song of Blades and Heroes is how I got my friends into wargaming. They loved it. It's our main game. Ganesha Games also makes some other great rule sets like Flying Lead. Yeah, Flying Lead is also a great one. It's a little bit more detailed, still based off the same kind of base idea of Song of Blades and Heroes, but it's got a little bit more detail built into it, which is nice. Anvil makes some really cool stuff, says Aaron Painting. I agree. Yeah, I really have been impressed with Cromlech is also nice, but Anvil I really like because you can, like, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted for Zona Alpha, because those models are supposed to be relatively kind of modern day, you can just go through and be like, all right, I'm going to buy a set of these pants. You know, it's basically legs, but they're not all identical. Each one of the 5 is like slightly different, but they all kind of have the same style. And I'm not even just saying different like in pose, but like this person's got knee pads and this person doesn't. And they're kind of tactical looking, you know? And then you can buy these torsos, and then you buy these sets of arms, and it's very, very like a la carte. So you have to pay attention and be like, I gotta make sure I do this and this and this so you don't show up and then they have stocks but no guns. Because some of the arms, like there's a notch like right in the top here, and then the gun just fits in it, and it might be an AK-47 style, it might be a M4 style, it might be whatever, but because most of the stock is sort of hidden underneath the arm, you're not going to really tell the difference that well. But they fit together really nicely. I also bought some cultists because I'm building a couple different warbands for Zona Alpha, and one of the factions in Zona Alpha is cultists, which I think is interesting. I just got done listening to the book that Zona Alpha is kind of based off of, which is called Roadside Picnic, which is from the early 70s. I think we have a fleecy parade starting. Anyway, it's written by 2 brothers, Russian brothers, and I was listening to it on Audible. I really enjoyed it. Are you done? No? That's Maggie. She has this little fleece braided toy that for some reason she gets into her mouth and then she walks around the house and sings. And we call it a fleecy parade. So, hey Adam, I'm getting into Frostgrave, planning to put a couple of warbands together. Any suggestions on how to start collecting terrain? I have the models, but nowhere to play during COVID. Yeah, I mean, playing during COVID is obviously kind of difficult. I am focusing, honestly, most on just trying to get things done so that when COVID's finally done, then I'll have a whole bunch of painted stuff to be able to use. So there's that. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I don't have any good tips on how to do that. As far as terrain for Frostgrave, I use a mixture of some GW Fantasy stuff, and I use some Battlefield in a Box. They have a lot of cool like pre-painted pieces of terrain that work out pretty nice. So I've regressed to painting old Rogue Trader and 2nd edition 40k models, mostly one-piece castings. I'm having a great time with them. Well, that's cool. That sounds fun. VJ Morph says, yes, Fleecy Parade. Oh, it's still going, yes. The brothers Strugatsky. That's true. Those are the guys who wrote the book. It's very good. I really like the book. Basically, the concept of if you've played Stalker, the video game, it's based off of kind of that storyline. Some people will even say that the movie that came out a couple years ago, Annihilation, also sort of in the same vein. Basically, the idea is that aliens visited and then they left. And we were all sort of scared about it, and then they just took off. And then the places that they landed and hung out are dangerous, but there's also amazing treasures there to some degree. So the governments and the worlds were the different places that they basically have cordoned it off and said, don't go in there because you'll get turned inside out, because this guy got turned inside out. And then there are people that are like, yeah, but there's a bunch of cool crap that I can sell and make money. And so those people are known as stalkers, and they basically sneak into these exclusion zones to find stuff to bring out to sell on the black market, things like that. And the government's trying to stop them generally. And also sometimes they get turned inside out or pulped by strange gravity wells that are just... And so it's a really interesting book. So yeah, if you get the chance, either read it or listen to it while you're painting. Let's see here. Singing the song of her people. Yes, she is. And it keeps going, too. I've heard that newbies should not start with airbrushes over rattle cans for priming. I live in the city, so it's really tough to get outside of rattle cans. Thoughts? Honestly, I think that if the very first thing you ever primed with was an airbrush, other than the fact that you want to practice at least a little bit, I don't think it's a bad idea. The thing about using an airbrush to prime is, number one, you actually want to use a airbrush primer. So, like Stynylrez, Badger makes something called Stynylrez, which is a pretty decent primer. Vallejo makes something called their Airbrush Primer or Surface Primer, depending on what the label says. Those are both great for airbrush. And it just allows you to be able to get, like when you're, like at least me, when I'm trying to rattle can prime outside, I set up a cardboard box and I have some models in there. And then you're spraying and all that kind of stuff. And it's hard to get it in the places that you're trying to get it. You know, like the undercuts, like underneath the armpits and in between the legs and stuff, because you're basically kind of spraying down. At best, you might be able to spray at this angle, but if you're trying to spray up to get up underneath stuff, like you can't do it very easily with the rattle can. If you want to spray everything, give it 10 minutes, then knock him over onto his tummy, and then spray this direction, right? And then give him 10 minutes, and then knock him over onto his back, and then spray this direction, then you can probably catch all the parts, all the undercuts and all that stuff. But if you have the model on a holder, or you stuck to a piece of wood, or whatever it is you do to hold onto your models, and you're wearing a glove, and you take your airbrush, and you're like spray, 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 you can bend it, get up underneath it. You can do all that in one shot, set it aside, let it dry. It's quicker in many situations. And as far as practice is concerned, literally it's not that hard. Priming is the easiest thing you can do with airbrush, I would, if you're super concerned about it, get some models you don't like very much, or models you painted on before that you don't want anymore, or some plastic army men or whatever, some Reaper bones, they're super cheap, and just practice on them a little bit. You want to put it on the thin coats versus thick coats because you don't want it to glob up, but that's basically about it. It works quite well. Let's see here. VJ Morph says, we'll probably check out the PDF of the new edition of Frostgrave. I told my local store to order me one, so hopefully I'll see it eventually. Let's see here. The Annihilation book was great, but the second and third left little to be desired. Oh, I didn't know there was a second and third book. Interesting. Caught the show. Hello from Lupburg, Germany. Well, hello. Scratch building your own terrain is too much fun. Pretty much all of mine is scratch built from junk and old kits. I want to start doing more scratch-built terrain. I have done a little bit, but I have generally stuck with kits just because very frequently it's much more detail and much more interesting than what I can do, and it's also very frequently way faster than scratch building, at least I find. But I do still want to try to do some scratch building. Maybe not so much for buildings and stuff like that, but maybe more for, and I don't want to say scatter terrain, but like smaller things that I just can't find anywhere else. Like buildings are buildings. I can find buildings lots of different places. That's not a problem. MDF kits, plastic kits from GW, plastic, all these different companies are making buildings. But if I'm looking for like a busted chemical tank, I can kind of find that sometimes with from like from Armor Cast in resin, but some of those models can be a little older, so sometimes they don't quite match the other stuff. But I can also build something out of like a pill bottle and a bunch of like little bits and things like that. So I want to kind of do a little bit of that and try that out. I've heard of Roadside Picnic before. I think there's a movie too. There was a movie called Stalker that came out in the late 70s that was loosely based off of it. It's not a one-to-one, but it's pretty close. Let's see here. Hey there from Santiago. Hey there from San Antonio, Texas. Been a while since I have been able to catch you live. You were the reason I bought my first airbrush. Well, good to hear it. Thank you for sharing your passion. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a big fan of airbrush. I'm not necessarily as good at it as some people. Like there are people out there like who have I been watching lately? Well, you know, Kenny Boucher from Next Level Painting is really, really good with the airbrush, in my opinion. Obviously, Angel Geraldez, I'm mispronouncing it terribly, and I apologize. He's a master. I've been watching a bunch of different people just on Twitch and stuff lately, also they're pretty good at it. Mohawk Miniatures, I know I watched just recently, does a lot of airbrush. I generally do priming, base coating, and some highlighting, maybe zenithal highlighting, that kind of thing. But I don't usually get in, partially because, and the thing that I wish that I had sometimes a little bit is that I see people who are like doing their Twitch streaming and they're like painting with a brush and now they're going to do some airbrush and they're right there in the same spot. My airbrush and brush painting areas are on opposite sides of the basement, so that won't work out. So yeah, it's fine though, but I generally like do airbrushing and then go do brush painting, and then maybe every once in a while come back and do a varnish if I have to do something weird back on the brush painting area, like if I need a gloss varnish for pin washing or something like that. But I so rarely do that. I don't generally. It's generally I start out in the airbrush room, I go and I paint with a brush until I'm done, and then I'm back to the airbrush room eventually to do a matte varnish. That's basically about it. I have a cheap airbrush and compressor, and it's amazing for priming and zenithal base coat. Then everything else is brush painted. Yeah, I generally kind of do the same thing. So yeah. Frostgrave has official MDF terrain now. No kidding. Huh. I have not heard about that. I should look into it. I scratch build primarily because I can't afford the kits and because I have a ridiculous amount of junked kits from the early 40 years of hobbies. Well, that's a good reason too. And again, there are plenty of people out there who do it just because they love it. Like there are people out there who are like, yeah, I play miniatures sometimes, but I mostly just build terrain, and that's very cool as well. Any chance of seeing that scratch building on Twitch? I think everything that I've got that's scratch built is actually at the studio. I'd have to bring something home. Probably. It's pretty old, but I could. Yeah, I got a ruined building corner that I worked on once. That's probably the most recent, and it's still pretty old. Tobias says, "I didn't know you do this thing. I didn't know you did this thing. Thank you for your content. The show where you talked about why and for whom we paint and about backlogging minis really helped me a lot. I've since painted a lot." Well, good to hear it. Yeah, I do this. So let's see. So I got the videos that go up every Friday that are pre-recorded. Then I do a live show every other Sunday, which is strangely enough called the Every Other Sunday Show here on YouTube. And then, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, I started streaming on Twitch as well. So I do on Twitch Monday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time and Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Time. And what I do there is basically paint models. So I've got like a top-down camera pointing down at what I'm working on, and there's a little camera up in the corner over here that's got my face on it, like in black and white and whatever, and I'm talking, and stuff like that, a little webcam. But the majority of it is me working on the screen, and you can see the close-up of what I'm painting and stuff like that. And I usually do it for about 3 hours. So yeah, I've been doing that, and I've been enjoying that a lot, honestly. And I enjoy this as well, but I enjoy that stuff, the Twitch stuff as well. So yeah, I'm keeping myself busy, I guess. We'll just say that. Let's see here. I have some decent figure cases for transport, but nothing for vehicles and large models. They end up transported in boxes carefully. Yeah, I've got a friend who transports like large vehicles and even terrain, and he just uses like a plastic tub, like a plastic Rubbermaid style tub or whatever. and he just fills it full of like packing peanuts, and then just, you gotta get the packing peanuts off the stuff and dig around in there a little bit when you get to where you're going. But it's pretty safe, especially in the car drive. So there's that. Any tips on airbrushing varnish? I have Liquitex varnish. Should I dump it and use airbrush specific ones like Vallejo? I don't know. I haven't honestly tried Liquitex through an airbrush. Generally, what I've used through my airbrush is either the Vallejo matte varnish, which is okay, but there are other matte varnishes out there too. AK Interactive has got a good one called Ultra Matte Varnish, though it's hard to find, frankly, because they're made in Spain, and if you live in America, it's just hard to find. There's a new company coming out of England called Instar, Instar, like Instar, all one word. And they have evidently got a really good matte varnish as well. I was going to buy some recently, and I still kind of want to, but currently the shipping between, like, basically it's going to cost at least $15, if not more, to ship anything, it seems. It's not a letter from the UK to the United States right now. Whether it's some sort of weird problem between Royal Mail and the USPS or whatever. I'm assuming it's mostly our fault for some reason. I don't know why. So that's kind of a bummer. But there it is. But yeah, that kind of stuff, like that kind of varnish, if you find the stuff you like, it can be really nice, actually. Really got to catch the Twitch stream. Are there any of the sessions saved for people who missed the broadcast? Yes, there are. What they call on Twitch, they're called VODs, VODs, which is video on demand, as opposed to just reruns or what reruns. They've got that rerun is a term that they use for something else. Anyway, the oldest ones have probably disappeared by now, but 2 weeks ago, not last week, yeah, 2 weeks ago, I got a partner on Twitch, so I had applied. Like when you first start off, you're streaming on Twitch, and then you hit these milestones, and then you can become an affiliate, which means you can actually get subscribers and make a little bit of money and things like that, which is cool. And then the next step up from affiliate is partner, and you have to jump through bigger hoops, well, smaller hoops, higher hoops. I don't know. There's different hoops you have to jump through, and you have all these different requirements, milestones, and you have to do that, and then you have to apply. And so I did that, and I applied, and it took just 1 day over a month. Like I applied on a Tuesday, and then waited exactly 4 weeks, and then 4 weeks later that Tuesday, I'm like, well, I don't know. And then the next morning I woke up and I had the email that said, congratulations or whatever. So yeah, so because I'm a partner now, one of the benefits of partner is that your video on demand, whatever, they stay longer. They don't disappear after 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. So you can see more of the recent stuff, but when I was painting those Necrons, I think that many of those videos have disappeared at this point. But I did a video about how to paint Necrons using a lot of footage from Twitch, so you could just watch that one, and it's shorter, frankly. So there's that. Yeah. Anyway, let's see here. I really don't know why Adam doesn't do voice work. He's so damn good at just speaking in tone. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I've had a lot of people tell me I should do audiobooks, and as I listen to a lot of audiobooks, I know I couldn't do audiobooks because, well, I couldn't do fiction audiobooks. Like listening to this Roadside Picnic on Audible just recently, the guy does so many voices and hops back and forth between English people and Canadians, and because the book takes place basically in Canada. And he himself seems to kind of generally skew a little bit more towards a New York accent, but the fact that he's able to hop around, I can't do accents very well or anything like that, so I think that would be my problem. If it were an audiobook that was nonfiction, I could maybe do that, but I don't know. Anyway, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I found a used Pelican case, $145 new, at a yard sale for $15 that I'm going to use for transporting my minis. Yeah, I've got a bunch of I've only really owned one name brand Pelican case, but I have a whole bunch of others that are basically like that, but not name brand Pelican, for photography junk mainly. But yeah, they're very sturdy. That would work quite well. Battle Foam's Magnarack transports are my favorite army transports since I magnetize my minis. It depends on the minis, obviously, yeah. You know, like, the magnetization is a super good idea if you are running, like Sylvaneth, because they're so spindly. Even, like, if you're concerned about it getting caught on stuff all the time, like, Tyranids are they can get caught in foam because they have a lot of hooks and spikes and all kinds of junk. Chaos can be that way, too. So yeah, it's interesting. So you want to look at the models and then figure that out. And the magnetizing, though it is a bit more work up front, it saves you a bunch of having to reglue busted off stuff a lot later on. And so yeah, the Magnaracks from Battle Foam are actually really nice for that. It's a really nice system. One of my friends from work has got that for his Sylvaneth, and it works out real nice. And they're very modular too, which is nice. I transport my Gaslands cars in a sectioned Plano box. It's perfect for the purpose. I can carry nearly 20 vehicles fairly securely. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Because it's got the little slots and the cars will fit in there real nice. I can see that. Ammo boxes and metal toolboxes work great, but any tub, tote, or case that you can glue sheets of ferrous tin to the bottom. That makes sense, yeah. Why does my Citadel Munitorium varnish go hazy on my models? That's a good question. I mean, it could be old. Is it the rattle can spray, or because don't they use Purity Seal? I don't remember what they use now these days. So yeah, it could be old. Oh goodness, there we go. Saying that for weeks now. Adam's voice is so relaxing and motivating at the same time. Well, I'm glad to help you folks get things done. That's the whole idea. I tried listening to an audiobook and was greeted by a 50-year-old man imitating a woman's voice. It was really weird. I have come across, because I really like audiobooks. I love listening to audiobooks while I'm building and painting and stuff like that. Or podcasts, but generally audiobooks, because I don't listen to a ton of podcasts and they only put out, so much at a time. Most of them are weekly or whatever. Sometimes they're only 2 weeks, so I paint more than that. So I frequently then have to backstop with audiobooks, which can be 10 hours long, and so that's a different story. Anyway. So that was weird. So audiobooks, there are some people that do a very good job as far as the narration. I had listened to a book by John Scalzi that was narrated by Will Wheaton, and I love Will Wheaton as a narrator. I've listened to a bunch of stuff, and he's done a lot of John Scalzi stuff. And so I listened to this book, and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed Will's narration. And then there was a sequel, I think, if I remember correctly, and the narrator was this woman who... She's an actress, and she used to be on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She was Willow's girlfriend, Tara or Tara. That's the character's name, and I can't remember if it's Tara or Tara. But the actress's name I've completely forgotten, unfortunately. But I always thought she seemed cool. I liked her on the show. But I think it was because I had just listened to Will doing it, and now she was doing it, and she did things differently, and so that sort of put me off at the beginning. But I kind of got used to it. But I have not come across any audiobook where I'm like, I can't listen to this because of the narrator. I think if you're really bad, then you probably don't end up doing it. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I need to rewatch the stream as my on and off made me doubt with my question was answered. As my on and off made me doubt. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Transporting Zeech demons in foam was a nightmare back in the day. Oh yeah, also very, very pointy, definitely. Be careful with Pelican cases. They look like they hold valuable things, guns, cameras, and why army cases get stolen out of vehicles. Disappointed thieves, no doubt. That's a good point. Yeah, if it's in your car and you don't lock it, people will be like, "Oh, that looks like it's probably protecting something very valuable and important, like a camera or a gun or something like that." And then they open it up and they're like, "What are all these Space Marines?" They won't even know they're Space Marines, probably. I mean, there's a slim chance that maybe they steal them and they're like, "Sweet, total full painted army, and I don't have to do that now." Maybe there's that, but. I've had the Game Plus foams, Battle Foam trays, and Citadel Army hard case with the zigzag foam. I think they all have their uses. Battle Foam is my favorite, but it's expensive unless you get deals. I kind of like the zigzag foam now too from Citadel. It doesn't work with everything, but for like normal 28 scale models, I kind of like the zigzag foam a little bit. It's not like if you start throwing that case around, it's problematic because the zigzag is not like attached to the bottom of the foam piece. So, and that's the idea, is that you can then move those to kind of, accommodate larger or weirdly shaped models. But I have had models shift and go underneath if that case was like dropped or something like that. But for normal carrying, I think that they work great. Amber Benson, is that her name? Might be. That sounds familiar, but yeah, she was. I'm 98% sure it was her then that was doing the voiceover for this John Scalzi book, and I forget which one it was exactly, but it's part of a series, and I just did not like her as much, and I still prefer Will Wheaton over. I would rather have him read nearly anything, but he's only got so much time in the day. Ray Dotrice is in the Guinness Book of Records because of all the characters he makes for the Song of Ice and Fire audiobook series. Takes a little getting used to, but he's great. Doesn't really do women. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Is that's also the hard part. Is like there are, like, Will Wheaton can do a woman, and he does it in this way when he's doing the voice where it's not cheesy, but you can tell that that's what he's doing. Yeah, I don't know. It's very well done. I can listen to anything by Toby Longworth. Toby Longworth does a lot of maybe most. He does a lot of 40K stuff, and I do like Toby as well. He's also quite good. I almost started listening to the Ravnor series again yesterday, but instead what did I start listening? I think I listened to a different podcast, but I'm probably going to get back into Ravnor again. Warhammer Fantasy was discontinued and replaced by Age of Sigmar in 2015. That seems like it's an answer to somebody else. I'm not sure. Oh, I see. You're answering this, Jason, up here. Help, I'm new to Warhammer and need a review of what's what, especially the difference between Age of Sigmar and Warhammer Fantasy. Yeah, so Warhammer Fantasy was the fantasy game that GW made up until 2015 when the end times came, and then they transitioned the game from that to Age of Sigmar. Now, if you have Warhammer Fantasy models, they will work with Age of Sigmar. They have gone through... The thing that's nice about Age of Sigmar is that you don't have to go out and buy the books. Basically, all the rules, including the War Scrolls, which are like the specific rules for each unit in the game, are downloadable from the website. There are still reasons you may want to buy the books because they've got cool fluff and artwork, and also very frequently there are special like battalions and special powers and things like that are only available in the book. But if you want to play with the models, the War Scroll, the overall stats for each model, those are free downloads. Will we see bat reps from you in the future? Well, I've done a couple, more than a couple. I've done 3, and that was the plan. But then the COVIDs, so. I'm very close to, I'm pretty close to doing a solo bat rep of a game called Planet 28 that I enjoy very much. And the reason that I'd be doing a solo bat rep is because they've made an add-on set of solo rules that will work with that game, so I could do that. But yeah, it's like I still am not having people up to the studio at all, and so that's part of what is a necessity for battle reports. But yeah, I don't know. They're a lot more work. They don't get tons and tons of views, so they're not necessarily a huge benefit, I guess, to the channel. I don't know. We'll see. I want to do them, I think, just because people have been asking for them a lot, and I want to try to do them differently than other people do them. And I'm not going to be doing 40K, and I'm not going to be doing Age of Sigmar probably. It'll be all smaller skirmishy type things. But yeah, we'll see. So far, I've done the original OG battle report I did was me and moderator Matt and special guest star Sam Lenz. And we did a short, it was like 18, 19 minutes short Wreckage demo. And then more recently, the beginning of 2019, did a battle report for Kill Team, Blood Angels versus my Death Guard, and then very early, or was that late 2019? I don't know. It's all blurred these days. And then early 2020, I did one, my Death Guard, again, Kill Team versus Sisters of Battle. So that's where that's at. I like my foam cubbies with the bubble wrap on the inside. It works great. That sounds good, yeah. I love the zigzag foam for my Imperial Knights. See, for Adeptus Titanicus, or like a full-blown... Because I would think something that big would be hard to get in those zigzaggy things. Like, that's the issue I see with the zigzags, is that like vehicles and big stuff like Imperial Knights will not fit, I wouldn't think, but I don't know. Let's see here. Hello from Minneapolis. You mentioned in a video that you store your airbrush in liquid. What is the liquid you store your airbrush in? It's probably about 3/4 distilled water and about 1/4 of, I use generally Iowata Airbrush Cleaner. When I'm cleaning my airbrush, I buy that stuff online and I get it in these, I don't know, 32-ounce bottles or something like that. Maybe they're 20. Anyway, I use that stuff generally. The reason you use distilled water generally is because as it evaporates over time, if it's sitting for a while, if it evaporates, like if you've got this thing and that your airbrush is in there and it evaporates over the airbrush a little bit so that the airbrush is actually poking out of the top of the water. Normal tap water has a lot more minerals in it, and so as it you'll get like a mineral line sometimes on your airbrush. Distilled water, not so much. So because it doesn't really have much in the way of minerals in it, so you don't get that as much. So that's one of the benefits. There are also solo scenarios for Age of Sigmar. They have them on Warhammer Community. Huh. Interesting. Audiobook of 6 of Crows and its sequels has a multiple cast, and each chapter is from a different character's perspective, moving through the narrative. An excellent Victorian fantasy heist story. Interesting. Oh, I knew what I was going to listen to. Shoot, I just remembered now. Because I bought 2 audiobooks. One was Roadside Picnic, which I just finished, and the other one is... Why did I not see it? Or did I not buy it? I thought I bought it. Anyway, there's a guy named Max Brooks who wrote a book called World War Z, which is not the movie. The movie, not great. It's okay, but it's not... It literally has almost nothing to do with the book. The book, World War Z, was this spectacular... Basically, it's like after the zombie apocalypse, and we've started to come back from the brink, and it's this person who went out and did all these interviews with all these people about their experiences during the zombie apocalypse. So each chapter is from different, and he travels all over the world and talks to people all over the place. And so it's super interesting. Well, this new book that he's done, which is called Devolution, maybe? Or something like that, is basically kind of the same style, where it's like it's all these different people's point of view of Mount Rainier in Washington State going volcano, and then an attack of Sasquatches? Sasquai? Anyway, it's basically like the volcano goes and then all these Sasquatches pour out of the mountains and come into Seattle, and there is a near invasion. And then this is afterwards, and so you're hearing all these different people's point of view and stuff like that. And the audiobook has got all these different actors, like well-known people, Nathan Fillion and all kinds of stuff like that, doing each chapter differently, which if you listen to the audiobook of World War Z, same deal. Each chapter's by a different person, and you'll recognize a lot of the voices. So anyway, I need to listen to that next. I'm pretty sure I bought it, but maybe I didn't. Because I think I would have saw that. Let me, this is exciting stuff here, but I'm going to go look real quick. Library. Could have swore I did. Well, I'll have to remember to do that when I get done here. Yeah, but it's very cool. Max Brooks is Mel Brooks, the actor-director's son. That's true, yes. That's very true. For my Mordor trolls, I turn 2 zigzag foams facing each other and put the trolls inside. It kind of sandwiches the trolls and works well. There you go. That's a good idea. Let's see here. Any thoughts on the new season of Underworlds that's coming soon? I haven't heard anything really about it. I'm assuming... Yeah, I mean, they're going to keep making that because it seems to be selling well and stuff, but I have not... no. I have not heard anything about it. World War Z audiobook is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Super, super good. The India and South Africa chapters are my favorite from World War Z. Yeah, that's true. Sass Squishies. Ooh, that could be possibly right, yeah. Confrontation minis are fantastic. I have tons of them, but never played the game itself. Confrontation, that was like a French company, I think, right? I know Sam was a big fan of their metal models. When he would be able to find them, he would buy them because he really liked them. But that was... I don't know if he's painted any in quite some time. Sasquatopoulos? That's hard to say. Max Brooks also wrote the Zombie Survival Guide. That's true. And there's a the Zombie Survival Guide book, which was almost kind of like a novelty book to some degree, is what actually caused him to write World War Z, because the Zombie Survival Guide was like literally it was like a textbook about how to survive a zombie apocalypse. But then there were all these little stories in there from people who have survived zombie apocalypse stuff in the past, and even some like zombie uprisings that have popped up way back in the past and all that kind of stuff. And people were like, that part of the book was really cool. So he was like, and then wrote an entire book that was just that part of the book. And there you go. And then they made a movie out of it, which not so great. It's okay. Actually turned out to be, I think, a better video game from what I've heard. But whatever. I watched the movie and I was like, meh. I've just added a bunch of H.P. Lovecraft to my read list, inspired to after watching Lovecraft Country. Yeah, I like not... Here's the thing. There are some of his stories that I'm just like, meh, didn't enjoy that at all. But there's other ones that I really do enjoy. Confrontation was Rackham. Yeah, I think that was a French company. Let's see here. I just watched Color Out of Space with Nick Cage recently. Also fueled a bit of Lovecraftian book purchasing. Yeah, I keep wanting to watch that. I think I'm going to have to watch it because I don't think my wife's interested. But I think I'll have to watch it by myself. I know World War Z has a great audiobook and a standout entry in its genre, but I can't bring myself to engage in zombie media anymore. It's overdone. Yeah, I think that was, like, that book and the audiobook came out at a time when we weren't oversaturated. We were not at peak zombie yet, so that was a benefit. But, yeah, I don't know. I know what you mean, though. Like, I'm just sort of... I don't want to say I'm done with zombies, but I'm a little done with zombies. Yeah, but I get what you're saying, definitely. I can't stand Nick Cage, personally, sorry. He's an acquired taste, maybe? I don't know, it's a good question. Lovecraft has been one of the most influential writers since Jordan Tolkien. Oh, yeah, no, I mean, there's so much stuff out there where people have, like, read that and then gone, oh, you know what I'm going to do is this, and make a movie or whatever. Yeah, there's tons of Lovecraft into a lot of things, yeah. They made Color Out of Space into a movie. I just read it yesterday. Yeah, it came out like last year maybe, and it's Nicolas Cage, and it doesn't. It's kind of low budget, I think, to some degree, but it doesn't look bad. So I kind of want to watch it. I keep hearing from people that Lovecraft Country is really good, and I don't have any kind of HBO of any flavor, and I should probably look into it because I'm interested in that. If you're looking into a good zombie movie, my wife loves Warm Bodies. You know, I remember seeing the trailer for that movie and wanting to see it, and I keep waiting for it to show up someplace, like a Netflix. Well, we have Netflix, we have Amazon Prime, and I don't think it's on either of those. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, if it would just come across one of those, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll watch that. But because I'd have to like either go rent it or whatever, I haven't. I don't know. That's a bummer. Hi, when you take photos, do you use camera booth lights or just your phone? So that's a good idea. That's a good question because that's kind of the subject for today's video. So the types of stuff that... So I did a video a couple years back, more than a couple years probably at this point, about how to take pictures with your smartphone of your models. So definitely go look at that. And that is if you're just looking for like a nice, just a simple like white background, you take like a piece of copier paper or whatever, and you sort of set it up and just get a little bit of a curve. You set your model there and you get like a window, and make sure it's not like direct sunlight coming in, you know, and causing harsh shadows. Like a cloudy day like I've got it going on here today would be perfect, or maybe a north-facing window or whatever, however that works. And you get like a nice daylight shot. You use your smartphone. So one thing you can do is use your smartphone. Here's the trick. In many situations, smartphones don't... How am I trying to say this? The app that comes with the smartphone for your camera doesn't give you a lot of manual control. So, one suggestion that I've got, and frankly, I don't know if it's on Google as well, or Android. There's probably plenty of apps like that. There's a couple others that I'll be able to show you that I do know are on Android. Buttons. Okay. And then I go back to this thing, and I do that one. There we go. Okay, so this is in the App Store, but that's because I've got an iPhone. But there's this company called Moment, and they started out making little add-on lenses and stuff like that for your camera. And then they made their own camera app, and this one's called Pro Camera by Moment, and I think it costs like $5, but it allows you not only to shoot really cool video and do a bunch of cool stuff, but it has a lot of like more pro features, stuff like focus peaking and zebra stripes, which are actually really nice, because what focus peaking does is it gives you, I don't know if we can see it close up here, not really. Focus peaking, what that does is it shows you what's in focus and what's not by actually putting like a little overlay of a bright color kind of, and it's these little lines, and this is what's in focus. When you take the picture, you won't see those lines, but for the visual, as you're kind of looking through the camera, you'll see what's in focus and what's not. And you can manually focus with these apps, not just like tap and hope, but actually like you're actually like moving your thumb, and it's like not zooming, but you know the focus is kind of moving back and forth. Zebra stripes are like focus peaking, but they're to show you if there's too much light in certain spots. You probably can't even barely see it here, unfortunately. But there's like these red kind of stripes on the wall up here, and this white part of the wall, that's showing you that it's blown out. It's all the way white, which you don't almost ever really want all the way white in any of your pictures. You want to be just under that, and you also don't ever want all the way dark. You want to be just a little bit above that. So, yeah, you have full manual control over your photos and video. And there are other ones out there that are also good. This is the one that I've been using the most recently. But I also sometimes have used down here Filmic Pro, which I'm 98% sure is available on both platforms, and Procam 7. Now, generally both of these you're going to end up having to purchase, but they're relatively inexpensive, and they're way cheaper than buying a camera. You know, so if you want to use your smartphone, you can do that. You definitely want to look into trying to get one of those little mini tripods or something like that too, because if you need to, like, let me go back to these pictures here. So, photos like this, and this is my Instagram, and I don't think I can make this full screen. I really hate the Instagram web interface. It's just really lackluster. Anyway, so photos like this are taken on a tripod, and I generally have the light where I need it, but it's not enough. When you take a picture, the shutter opens and the shutter closes. Technically, it barely even does that anymore these days. It's more of an electronic shutter, so it's not a physical moving thing. But anyway, whatever. It's bringing in light, and then it's not taking in any more light. And the longer it does that, the more light that can come in. The longer that the shutter is open, more light can come in. The problem is that the longer the shutter is open, if the subject moves, or if the subject in relation to the camera moves, which is to say if the camera wiggles, then everything gets blurry. So if you've ever seen a picture of like someone in a race car and they're going by super fast and it's just like a blur, but everything else is still, Generally what happened is the camera was on a tripod, so it stayed very still, and the buildings and the trees and whatever probably didn't move, and then the car just went by while the shutter was open, and it just made a blur, okay? If you want to try to catch that car so it doesn't look like it's moving, then the shutter has to open and close so incredibly quickly that it freezes the car in space. The problem is that the shorter amount of time that shutter is open and closed, the less amount of light that comes in. So you need to have a brighter day, or you need to have more lights set up if it's still a studio kind of shot, something like that. So trying to find a tripod is super helpful, because you can, especially when you're starting to manually control your camera, if you're using your phone, let's say, you can then start to go through, and the reason that you might want to have a longer exposure to let in more light of things that are not moving is because you might want to be able to, like right here in this picture, you can see these guys are in focus in the front here. These three lads are in focus. This guy's a little bit out of focus, and the guys in the background are way out of focus, and then there's the terrain and this tree and all that kind of stuff. These things are all, that's called depth of field. We see things in focus because you look at this thing, you look at that thing, you look at this thing, and your eyes are constantly focusing. It's very difficult for you to see things out of focus. Like if I'm looking at this thing that's close, the stuff that I can barely see in my peripheral, I know is out of focus just because I know how lenses work, but it doesn't look out of focus to me. And if I look at it to see if it's in focus, my eyes instantly focus it. So it's hard to see that. Cameras, however, very different. In movies, very frequently you'll see somebody who's like close to the camera, like right now here. Nick is out of focus. This is a thing that I did on purpose. I have to use this camera and set it in a certain way so that I'm in focus and that's not. Most webcams try to get as much focus as possible. So I'll be in focus and all the junk on that shelf back there and all that stuff would be in focus. And I'm trying to make it so that, and you've seen this before in videos, I'm sure, where people are like, this person's talking and yammering away like I am right now, and people in the comments are like, hey, what's this thing? And they're commenting about this stuff in the background because they can see it and it's in focus. In this situation, I wanted this stuff to be a little bit less in focus. It's hard to do that with a webcam. You're starting to now see these like systems that can be built into like Skype and stuff like that sort of blur the background, but they don't look great. So the best way to do it is actually photographically, but you need generally a slightly better camera to do that. But at the very least, you need manual control. You need to be able to say, I want my aperture, the hole in the lens to be wider open, and then that makes my depth of field shallower. See my hand? Like it's out of focus, and then it gets to be in focus when it gets near my face, and then as I start to move backwards, it gets out of focus again. That's what's called depth of field. In this picture here, I made sure that these guys were in focus, but the other guys I wanted to be out of focus, and I wanted the terrain to be out of focus. I wanted to have that sort of layering, that depth. So you'd want to watch probably some videos about photography to learn about shutter speed, aperture, and then the third thing is known as ISO, or gain, depending. But that is how sensitive the sensor is going to be. The more sensitive to light the sensor is going to be, the more light it will pull in. But the problem is the picture will start to look grainier. It's not actually grain, it's actually digital noise, but we call it grain because back in the old days, when you used to use film, the way that you made a piece of film more sensitive to light is that you actually put bigger chunks, again, we're talking about microscopic, but still bigger chunks of the silver halide, which was the mineral that was basically light reactive, light sensitive. You put bigger chunks of silver halide on the film, so you got film that you could shoot in darker situations and still get a decent picture, but it would look grainy because the actual tiny little chunks would be literally larger, whereas like 100 speed film, you couldn't see the little chunks because they were so small, but then because they were so small, they couldn't pull in as much light. So it kind of works that way. When we got into digital, we got rid of the film grain. But what happened is as the sensors would bring in more and more light to be more and more, sensitive to the light, something happens. It's the physics of light to some degree that makes the sensors generally a little bit noisier, and then we get noise instead of grain. But to our eyes, it still looks like grain. Anyway, so it's constantly a bit of a battle to figure out, you know, how you want to set things. But if you watch a couple of videos about photography, you get the general concept. And then again, almost always you're looking at a tripod in these situations. And the thing is about a tripod is that generally, and here's a trick, if I'm trying to make sure my camera doesn't shake, whether it's my smartphone or whether it's a regular camera, doesn't shake while I take this picture because it's going to be a long exposure, the worst thing that I can do is poke the smartphone to make it take the picture or press the button down on the camera to make it take the picture, even if it's on a tripod, because that will inherently shake the camera a little bit while the picture's being taken. So what you do, back in the old days, you used to have this thing called a shutter release, which was like a cord that you screwed into the camera, and then it was a plunger, and you pushed it, and it like pushed the button remotely. And there's electronic ones now too. But generally what I do is I just set the self-timer, and then I'm just not in the shot. So you set the self-timer, you poke the camera and say, take the picture, and then it counts down 10 seconds, and while it's counting down, the camera stops shaking, and then it takes the shot. And it's just a way easier and quicker way to make sure that though you may have a longer exposure, the shutter stays open longer to let in more light, it will not cause the camera to shake, which means you will not get as blurry of a picture. You'll get something in focus. Like in this picture, I want some blur. I want blur in the background. I want blur on these guys. But these guys who are in the front, I want them to be sharp. So if I was to poke the camera or poke the smartphone or whatever to take these shots, it wouldn't work out because it would shake the camera during the shot. So you poke it, it counts down 10 seconds, it settles down, and then it takes the shot. So this is a smartphone photo just on my desk. These guys over here, the Skaven that I did also on Twitch recently, these were also studio shots that I took in the studio. I'm using terrain here as a backdrop. So I've got, you know, like this is the old, I forget the name of this tower, but it's a Games Workshop. It was an old Warhammer Fantasy tower that I've painted up. And this is the Realm Gate, the Baleful Realm Gate. These trees back here, these dead trees are all from Monster Fight Club. Now you'll notice, and I don't want you to, but you will notice here that these guys are standing on like a neoprene mat. Okay, you can see the cloth texture and things like that. Here I tried to make it so you wouldn't see the floor that much. You wouldn't, you know, if you take a picture down at the model, you're going to see the floor more. If you take a picture down from the model's angle, like from the model's like eye, you know, line, you're less likely to see the ground, which is nice. But sometimes then you need to do it on the edge of a table so that like the models are on the table and you are actually a little bit lower than the table, so you can almost shoot up at them a little bit. And so, you know, sometimes you take a cardboard box and you stack it and you put a little tripod down there, whatever you're going to do. But there's things like that. If you're only ever just like, I put models on the table and I shoot them from the table, you're only ever going to get like kind of not top down, but like top angle sorts of images. And again, you can kind of see the over here, there's a little bit of that matte. I'm trying to find some other types of boards. The other type of boards that I like, you know, like this is from Secret Weapon Miniatures. This is a plastic, like urban three-dimensional board. If you've watched the last two battle reports that I've done, they've been on this board set from Secret Weapon Miniatures, and it's just really nice. You know, you have to paint it, but still, it's like a street. There's like sewer and like a curb, and there's like busted up stuff, and it's a really nice set, and that just makes the things look a lot nicer along those lines as well. This picture is a photo that you can see a little bit of kind of what I was doing here. So there are lights up above here that you can't see because they're not in the shot. My camera's at the bottom, and then you can see these folks, and you can see a tree, and you can see some stuff. This is just a piece of black, like, foam core. But I was trying real hard not to have the foam core in the shot. So if the ground is not going to be in the shot and you can sort of effectively shoot up, like you can see this camera is a little lower than the table, and I'm actually kind of angled up, you know, over the table. When you do that, it works out nicely. But then you need to pay attention to your backdrop. There was just a black backdrop back there. I've got like this green light over here. This was footage that was used in a video I did a while back about a month ago. And I can't remember what the heck it was about. I think it was that one about being smart and like buying models that you could work in many different types of games. These were a bunch of skeletons. You could use them in Age of Sigmar. You could use them in all kinds of different fantasy style games. So I just took a bunch of images of those. And I don't think I put that picture up on my... No, I didn't. And then these guys over here, this is my Necrons, and they were, again, same type of deal. Just, I got real fancy with lighting and stuff like that, but you don't have to go this fancy, but you can. The trick is that you don't have to use super expensive lights. I don't use even that expensive lights. I use more expensive than most of you probably want to for what you're doing, but I'm doing it kind of semi-professionally. It's lights that I use for video and stuff like that. But you can use lights of lots of different, you can just use like normal like desk lamps and then put like a piece of paper over it. Like, and I've told you about this before, the light that I've got shining on me here to light me up a little bit is like a hobby light, and I just have a piece of, I'll just take this off. You see how this much brighter now? I just have this piece of typing paper, well, not typing paper, who types anymore, but it's like a piece of paper out of our printer from upstairs, and I just curled it into a tube, put a piece of tape here, and it just happens to perfectly fit over the top of the light, and then it makes a nice diffused light. So doing stuff like that can really help. Just, you know, there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of videos out there from people who are showing you how to use the lights you already have to get lighting techniques. If you want to go down this road and take really cool pictures of your stuff, you're going to have to learn things. People will say, oh, the first thing I got to do is buy a good camera. First thing you need to do is you need to go and watch a bunch of videos to learn whether you need a good camera or whether you can get away doing it with your smartphone. And secondly, if you do need a good camera, how good of a camera, and maybe like what kind of things you might want to learn about to decide which makes a good camera for you in your particular situation. But yeah, so anyway, this is the, where's the picture? This is the picture here. It's a two-part picture, but I've made it look like it's one. But this was the picture that the GW put on their Twitch stream, I don't know, a month and a half back or whatever, when they, right on the, like, Indominus launch day, when they first, you know, they showed up in stores. They had asked a bunch of creators who they had sent Indominus to say, hey, can you send us some pictures? And this was the picture that they shared of mine, which was really nice. I enjoyed it. So anyway, let me do this and that and this. Okay. All right. So a bipod has two legs, however. It's a good point. I don't think they make a quad pod. I've never seen one. I don't own a bipod either because I think that they're more like a gun thing. I own a monopod and I own I own a lot of tripods. Anyway, so I hope that some of that was slightly helpful, or if you've got some questions, feel free to ask. We still got about 20 minutes. It's not something that you're going to do awesome in the first time. Like, I went to college for photography. So I've been doing this a long time. So I can do okay and do stuff, you know, like the shots that I took yesterday of the Colony Militia guys that I put up on Instagram yesterday. I shot those yesterday morning. I spent probably, I don't know, 2.5 hours. I got maybe, I don't know, less than 30 shots, and I really only picked about 5 that I liked, and I only put 3 of them on Instagram because a couple of them were kind of similar. But yeah, so that's a thing to look at. A lot of cameras now have, like, if you buy a slightly fancier camera, a lot of them will link up with your like an app on your phone, so you can push the button remotely rather than having to count down 10 seconds. Some of them work better than others. I've got one that's supposed to work with my Sony cameras so that I could see, like, basically I put it on the iPad so I can see a bigger picture than I can from the little lens on the back, or the little image on the back of the camera. It works okay. It's not great, honestly. But yeah, so that's always one of those things. I like part of what I've started to learn to do also is that instead of just shooting on the table, I've actually built up a little mini table on the table so that my camera can be a little bit, again, lower down. Shooting pictures of miniatures, you want to sometimes get lower than the miniature a little bit to give the miniature, you know, like if you get down below the miniature, it makes the miniature look bigger and more imposing almost, you know, that kind of thing. But again, you always need to pay attention to your backdrop. You can just use you can use lots of different things, and frankly, if you want to and you have any kind of Photoshop ability or anything, you can frequently take out the backdrop if you need to later on. Like if there's like if you used a sheet but it was folded and you can still see the folds a little bit or the wrinkles or whatever, you can usually knock that stuff out and get rid of it. but there's a lot of different options. I don't know. I've kicked around the idea of like trying to figure out, I don't know, like some sort of class about miniature photography. I'm not great at it, frankly. There are a lot of people who I think are better at it than I am, but I've got a big background in photography in general, and I'm learning more and more about photographing miniatures every day and just trying to find fun little, like, the reason that you generally see stuff like this as opposed to just all of these models sitting in a white backdrop is because I'm generally not trying to, like, I kind of want to show the models like in a perfect world we assume they're going to look like in our game. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at a battle report, very frequently it's just like there's dice and tokens and this all, and it doesn't exactly look like a battle, but in your mind's eye, this is what's happening. So the photos that I take, instead of just being like on like one of those kind of like high school image kind of backdrops, you know, or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with those, but the stuff that I want to take, it's maybe not showing off the paint job. And I'll be honest, these are not great paint jobs. This was a speed paint. I painted these 10 guys in probably a little over 4 hours. Not including building and stuff like that. Like, I built them, you know, I glued their heads on, and I, you know, whatever, sanded them here and there and all that kind of stuff. Got rid of some mold lines and then primed them. But from the time they were primed to the time that they were basically ready to be matte varnished, it was maybe 4.5 hours of paint work. And the reason for that was because it's predominantly, like I said, everything except for the bases is in contrast colors. So it was a black and white zenithal. I just slopped on this gray, I slopped on this green, and you get the variations in the shading and the highlight and all that stuff because of the zenithal. So it was a very super fast speed paint. So I'm not here to show you, oh, look how good my paint job is. I'm here to show you these guys are cool sculpts. I tried to paint them, I think, relatively quick and relatively okay, and tabletop at least. And then I want to put them into an image so that they look as cool as they can look. Now, if I was trying to like win some sort of award, you know, like back, I don't know what they're going to do in the future, but back when the Crystal Brush was in Adepticon, it wasn't that you got to, as the artist, take your own pictures of your models. They had people there at Adepticon who took the pictures of the models, and they took them all the same so that when you looked at the website, nothing ever got tweaked. Like, there's a lot of people out there, myself included, like, especially with these, because I'm trying to make a photograph. I'm not trying to show, oh, this is how cool my paint job is. I'm trying to tweak things a little bit to make a better photograph. But sometimes when people are trying to show you this is how good my paint job is, they can go in Photoshop and tweak things a little bit that maybe they wish were better paint-wise, and that's, you know, whatever. But with the big competitions, like I said, like Crystal Brush, you didn't get to take pictures of your own models. You brought the model in, they set it up, they had their own lights, they had their own camera, they had their own people, they shot everything so that when you went to the website to do the whatever you call it, the fan favorite or whatever, they had a specific name for one of the categories of awards, People's Choice, something like that. You were looking at an even playing field because all the images were taken not by the artists, and they were all taken at the same setup, almost the same time, not exactly, obviously, but yeah, usually the same day. So anyway, it's interesting, and I don't know. Photography is, there's a lot of people who are like, and the thing is a lot of people also will say, well, my pictures always look so junky. That's just part of photography as it relates to miniatures. Everybody's miniatures, I feel, look worse when you take a picture of them versus when you look at them. And like, every model that I have ever shot, in my mind, looks worse than it does when I hold it in my hand and look at it, or I set it on the table and look at it. And it's just something to do about getting so close to it that you like almost overanalyze everything. I did a video about this years ago about how when you're done with a model, or you think you're done with a model, take some close-up pictures of it, because you will find stuff you missed, or you'll find some stuff that you're like, oh, that looks weird, that you just don't see with your eyes. And it's something about I think it's personally something about taking the image and making it two-dimensional, and then your brain processes it differently than when you're looking at it three-dimensionally. I think it has something to do with that. I think it's also the potential that the camera can get a lot closer to the model than maybe your eyes can focus, something like that. But anyway, I'm trying to shoot them in their natural habitat to some degree. Yeah, definitely. Dang, 4 hours. I just got into 40K, and it took me 4 hours just to build my first group. Again, they were basically two-part models. I had to glue the heads on them, and I had to put them on the bases and then texture their bases. So that was some time, but the actual sitting down and painting part only took me, like I said, a little over 4 hours, but that was also because, like I said, used contrast paints. It's very quick, that way. Also, I've been doing it long enough that I've gotten speedier as a painter. When you first start out, you're generally a lot slower. I was a lot slower when I first started out, so. Let's see here. Phone cameras are shockingly high quality sometimes. These days, yeah. No, it's amazing. Like, I worked in a camera store from like 90 to 94 when I was in college. And if you would have showed the people at the camera store that were coming in with these expensive cameras that they bought, you know, like real photo nuts that were spending, even back in the early 90s, spending $2,000-$3,000 for a camera. And if you were to show them a picture that you'd taken, like I mean, like, that's as deep as this camera is, right? Like that's it. Like, it's so like, this is not the camera. Only like a little bit of this is the camera up in this corner, and yet you can take pictures that are so incredibly sharp. Let's see if I can. Like, this is not gonna. Like, that is a picture of Margot, and she is she's just being a little sweetie pie, and laying upside down. But like, if I zoom in on this photo, I don't even know if I can find it in my photo thing, but like, the amount of detail in the hairs, like around her eyes and stuff like that, is absolutely crackers. Albums, cat. Oh, I do have it. Yep, cats. Boom. So like, that's the photo, right? And so if we zoom in, like, just the amount of, like, you can't. This is not helping you guys, but just the amount of detail. Wrong way. It's astounding that I was just shot with like something like this. So as a person who's been into photography for a long time, I am astounded by the images. Like, I took a picture of Diesel yesterday in the den. He was like, had his chin on Emily's legs as she was watching TV, and I took this picture and I looked at the picture and it was brighter than my eyes could see it in the room, and I didn't do anything. I just took the picture and I looked at it, and there's no flash, and I was just like, I like held it up. I'm like, look, this is brighter than it is here in the room. And she's like, yeah. And it's what these smartphones do that regular cameras don't do is something called computational photography. Computational photography is the idea that you probably want this picture to be better than what we can do just by taking it. So we're going to tweak it a little bit without asking you, kind of, in some situations. Sometimes you'll take a picture or a selfie and you'll be like, wow, my skin looks amazing. No, it doesn't actually. It's just that the camera's like, it figured out that that's a selfie, and they figured out they didn't want to give you a crap picture, so they smoothed out your face a little bit. And sometimes that can be weird and annoying, and sometimes you want to turn it off. And then you have to go into the settings and find that. But in general, cameras at a low level have a certain amount of computational photography that you can't turn off. Whereas a normal camera, you take a picture and it's generally a raw image that then gets modified a little bit, but you can also just get the raw images out of there. Out of the newer, like, I think I can set this to give me a raw image as well, but generally, I just, you take snapshots a lot of times with that. So, anywho. I find hordes of flaws in my painted minis when I blow them up the image. The great painters still look great when you look closely. I'm working towards that little by little. That's part of it, yeah. But even the great painters, when they look at their pictures, a lot of times they're like, ugh, like, they're like, this isn't, it's just something about transferring it from I think the 3D to the 2D that really brings out the things that you missed, and brings that stuff out here. Heard a weird beep outside. It's an economy of scale thing. The vast majority of camera modules end up in phones. Nowadays, that's true. It's very true. That's how I first found out about a fuzzy primer job, was through a digital camera. Yeah, again, like I said, taking pictures of your models is a really great last step before you start varnishing, because you can at least look at them. And I'm not even saying taking pictures like to put them on your Instagram, but just take the pictures and look at them and then go, oh yeah. Like, there have been times like I've completely missed like the end of somebody's sword. They're holding a sword and there's like a little ball on the end. I don't know what's that, pommel? I don't know what that is. Anyway, and I just didn't paint it. Like, it's still primer. And I'm like, how did I miss that? Like, I've been looking at this model for, X amount of hours. I completely never painted that thing, but I caught it right away when I took a picture of it. So, yeah. Matt Sears says, I backed up my computer and the cat's picture album was not small. Yeah, there's a lot of cat pictures on my phone too. That's a good point. Could I ask you, can you recommend any sort of 40K backdrop I can use for model photography? So what I've been using here... No, you can't see that there. Let me go back to the Instagrams. Okay, so let me push this button. There we go. Okay. So what I'm using here is terrain. Like what you're seeing here is basically just all terrain. Now, if you have enough terrain set up, it makes a great little backdrop, and if it's been painted, that's helpful. But it makes a good, it puts them in their environment, and it makes a good backdrop, and works out nicely that way. And then if there's some spots where maybe there's like a gap in between there, if you just don't have any lighting back there, it'll kind of turn black. Like if there's a window back there, that won't work, if there's like sunlight coming through and stuff like that. Generally, when you're shooting stuff, you want to be in a relatively, like unless you're trying to use the daylight, you're generally trying to shoot someplace where there's basically no light, or you have control over the light. So I like to shoot in the basement. If you live in a place that doesn't have a basement, I don't know, you find a room that you put the curtains and the shades, whatever, or shoot at night. That's also a possibility. But yeah, it's easier to be able to add light to a dark room than it is to try to get a light room dark. You know what I mean? So there's that. But yeah, so that type of backdrop I think works really well. Again, you need to be a little bit lower down sometimes, but that it can work real well that way. Then when you get into stuff like this, like the backdrop that's back here, this is the same backdrop. So it's not like I have a red backdrop, a blue backdrop, and a kind of dark orange backdrop. What I have is it's a two-sided backdrop that's black on one side and white on the other side. And I think it's 5 foot by 7 foot. And it's one of those that like folds up. Like if you unzip the package that it comes in, you pull it out, it goes boing, and it pops out, and it's 5 foot by 7. And then you have to like sort of twist it and bend it to get it back down to the package. You can get them on Amazon for, I don't know, 30, 40 bucks. And you may probably not need a 5 foot by 7 foot one, but fancy. So anyway, but you use something like that. So this is the black side, and then I just have an orange light that's shining up on it out of the shot. You can't see it here. It's behind the terrain and these trees, but it's shining this orange light up at the black, and it's catching it enough that you get this real subtle kind of orange. Here is the white backdrop, and now I've taken that same light and changed it to a blue light and shined it up on there. Getting an inexpensive RGB light, a light that you can, like they make a lot of different cheap photo lights now that are like RGB, where you can basically just change the color and say I want it to be blue or green. It's like all the colors in the rainbow, and then you can also change sometimes the saturation, like it's a real pale blue versus a really bright blue, but it's the same value of blue. You also have a dimmer, so you can make it either just like a little bit of blue, like it's just a real dim blue light, or a really bright blue light, but the same color, with that kind of stuff. Getting one of those is, and then like honestly, if you want as many backdrops as possible, you just buy one of those like double-sided, or you can just use like poster board. Depending again on how much space you need, poster board can do the job. Like a white piece and a black piece, and then just like a light that has the ability for you to change the colors. You can even buy those like strips of lights that you see like on Amazon and places like that, and those are RGB as well. And it just gives you the ability to hop back and forth between different colors. Here, this is the black backdrop with the red light shining up on it, so you get this sort of weird evil red light sky. Here you got a blue sky, and here you got, I don't know, just a grungy sort of, whatever. Those are the types of backdrops, and then I always like to put terrain in there because I want them to look like they're in their natural habitat, as somebody said earlier. So, yeah, I think that's doing that kind of stuff and setting those things up, I think is really cool. It's a lot of fun. If you're looking to just take a picture that you just want to share and you don't want any of that backdroppy stuff in the background, there are plenty of inexpensive light boxes, again, that you can buy through places online. Some of them are as small as maybe like a foot square, and they fold up, and they've got LED lights built into them, and you just have to plug them into like a USB charger kind of thing and plug it into the wall, and it lights up, takes some pictures. They're nice and bright. On the other hand, like I said, you can also just use a window if it's a nice cloudy day out, or if it's a north-facing window, and you just take a piece of like typing paper like this and just have it like make a curve with it, put it up against a box or something like that. Go watch that video about how to use your smartphone to take better pictures of your models, and that would give you a bunch of good options as well. But if you want to start getting and making little tableaus and little fancy business like here, you can do it. It takes some practice, and you want to learn some photography tips, not trips. So like how do I make it so this guy in the background here is a little bit more out of focus than these guys in the front, that kind of stuff. And you can learn, I think, some really interesting things and take some really cool pictures that way. So Same thing happened to me the other day. I painted Cad Bane for Legion and completely missed the wires that run along his arms into his gauntlets. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've saved a paint job by taking a picture of it, even just with just on my desk with a smartphone and taking some close-up shots, because you can get really close with smartphones too nowadays. That's also really amazing. Which Canon will be better to take photos of miniatures, the EOS 77 or the EOS 80D? I don't know what the EOS 77 is. I've heard the 80D. 80D's, I would say, frankly, overkill. Like, that's a pretty fancy camera. You can also shoot video with it and all that kind of stuff. You can do a lot of cool things with a camera like that. I don't know what the 77 is, frankly. But yeah. Thanks for the tip on cleaning dry brushes. My dry brush was full of gray. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It is one of my least watched videos in quite some time, as it turns out, which I kind of thought, from the amount of people that I got that asked, they were like, how do you clean these makeup brushes? I thought this was going to get a bunch of views. It is not yet quite to 10,000 views, and it's Sunday now, like at noon. Normally, lately, a lot of my videos have hit 10,000 views by lunch on Friday when they come out, like early in the morning. So yeah, it's. I'm glad that you liked it, but not a lot of people evidently cared, so that was fine. It's still out there. It's probably one of those long-term videos that people, evergreen, people will hopefully watch it over a long period of time. Are there any tips on taking model pictures at tournaments? What I generally do at tournaments, if I'm like at LVO and things like that, is if they've got let's say they got their models all set up, like on a display board, I will very frequently take a bigger image of the whole thing, and then take a bunch of kind of close-up shots of a bunch of, I think, the really interesting pieces that they've got. And then if I put it on Instagram, very frequently I put up multiple images at once on Instagram, so you can kind of slide through them. So you'll see the big image and then close up of the three really interesting pieces or whatever. That's generally what I do. If you are trying to take studio style stuff then I've seen people do it, but you then end up having to bring lights and whatever and try to figure out how to do something kind of portable or whatever, and that's kind of a pain. But if you just want to take cool pictures of stuff that people have you're going to, again, use your smartphone, you can get some pretty good shots, but you'll definitely want to, the closer you get to something, you can almost sometimes you can force the camera, even on a smartphone, to blur the background the closer you get to something. As you get closer and closer to a model, the background gets blurrier and blurrier, and that's just a photographic principle. If you've ever seen a picture of a close-up of a bee in a flower doing stuff like that, the bee is in focus, but the flower starts to get out of focus and the leaves are out of focus, and we're talking about a distance about this far, right? But if you see a picture of a person and they're standing outside and there's a mountain in the background, and that person's 30 feet away from the camera and the mountain is miles and miles away from the camera, and everything is in focus, that's because the farther away you focus with a camera, the wider that depth of field gets. But the closer and closer and closer you get to something, the narrower and narrower and narrower that depth of field gets. So even with a smartphone, if you shoot close-up pictures of your models, the background will get kind of blurry, which you kind of want, because you want that separation between this is the focal point of the image and the background's not as important. So yeah, that's definitely the case. I have an old brush that I only use for loading paint into the palette. I used it for cleaning my airbrush. The alcohol and the old paint came off like magic. Oh, nice. All right. Well, it is 11 a.m. in my neck of the woods, so I want to thank people for coming, and I hope that this was at least vaguely helpful, or at least partially helpful. If you want to get into taking pictures of your models in their natural habitat, I would start by going and doing some YouTube learning about photography a little bit, and then and how to DIY low budget lighting, how to use, again, pieces of paper and things like that, and lights you might have around the house. You could do some cool stuff with it. Take some pictures with your smartphone. If you really start to get excited about it and you really start to like it, then think about maybe getting a better camera as you go down the road. But don't just be like, well, I can't take any pictures of my models until I get a better camera, because that's just not true. The cameras that we carry around pretty much every day now in our smartphones are pretty astounding. So there you go. All right. Anyway, again, thanks again for watching. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. I'll see you hopefully on Twitch if you get the chance. I'll be tomorrow is Monday night, so Monday night 7 p.m. Central Time. I'll be painting more Putrid Blight Kings and maybe even starting to work more on the big fat guy on the bug. So that'll be fun. And otherwise, another video is upcoming Friday. And thanks for watching.